Test, test, test.
Yeah, it's a lot of that. How are you? We were waiting for you. We were going to start without you. Oh. We have lots of fun. How are you doing? All right? Good. Good. You know, just another day living the dream. Yeah, retirement day, you know. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little overrated. The time has come, the walrus said, to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings. Thanks to Lewis Carroll, I always wanted to say that piece opening a meeting, and now I did. Welcome. My name's Nelson North, and it has been my great pleasure these past 2 years to have served you as your president of the Board of Trustees of Pequot Library. Hard to believe 2 years has gone, but actually no. So as president, it is my job now to call to order the 133rd meeting of the Pequot Library. Think about it, 133 years. There are not a lot of organizations that can say that. This one did, has, and will continue to. You should have in your packet the minutes from last year's meeting. I don't expect you to read them. Trust me, they're good. So I will ask at this time for a motion to accept those minutes. Do I have I have a motion? Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you very much. First and foremost, I want to thank you for turning out today. But I also want to thank you for your support of Pequot Library, because folks like you for the last 100, and that's a great number, 133 years have supported the library through your time, talent, and treasure. Because without you, there wouldn't be a Pequot Library. We couldn't do our job. Tell your friends how good it feels to support a 133-year-old organization. Please. Oh, and by the way, I'd be remiss to say, if you have any treasure you want to donate, please. We're always looking. So, this past year, past 12 months, has really been pretty incredible in many, many regards. I just want to touch on some of the highlights, and you'll hear more as we go on, and there's lots more information in the handouts that you have. But the big one, the big one, was we completely finished paying off all our financial obligations regarding the roof so that the roof is totally paid for, no debts, done, done, and done. Also, very importantly, we launched a couple months ago a strategic planning committee. This committee is going to work from now with a deadline of the 30th of June to come up with a strategic plan for Pequot Library. What a strategic plan does is it gives you a road that you want to try and follow to get from where we are now to where we want to be. In order to get there, we need to do a fair amount of discovery work. We need to find out who we are. Look at it again. We need to find out who our customers are. They're not the same customers we had 20 years ago. We need to find out what our customers want. We need to figure out what we can do to serve them better, because that is our primary purpose. So we hope to have this plan ready by the end of June and then to go forward with it after that. And hopefully the plan will carry us through the next 3 to 5 years. That's generally the length of the strategic plan. Also, this past year, one of the big wins was we got more board members involved on more committees than we ever had before. That's a really good thing because we want committees to have a good cross-section of the board. We addressed, and you can see it, we have addressed a number of buildings and grounds issues, and there will continue to be buildings and grounds issues. We've got an old building and we've got a lot of grounds, and they're very special, but it requires a lot of work, a lot of planning, and obviously the financial planning to keep them in the condition that we want. We're starting a governance committee. A governance committee to look at our bylaws and to look at the way we run the organization. This will be a standing committee, an ongoing standing committee, so that we can run more efficiently and smoothly going forward. We also brought, and Lynn Lukoff gets the kudos for this, we brought the board up to strength. We've been low in numbers. We now have a strong board. You're going to meet a lot of the new muscle, use that term, that we brought in. We've got, I think, a really, really, really outstanding board. So it's been a very satisfying year for me. And at this point, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Lynn Lukoff, who chaired the nominating committee, and will introduce you to our new candidates. Lynn, there you are. You're right in front.
The nominating committee is very pleased to present. Am I not? Can you not hear me? Yes? Okay, it's better? All right, good thing. Nominating committee is pleased to present the following people for a slate of new trustees. One returning is Caroline Calder. New trustees, Jennifer Bradford Kennedy, Dan McHale, Margaret Reich, Blythe Lacey Smith, and Libby Trischler. And you'll see their bios in your handouts today. And a slate of our officers: President Kokan Wilcox, Vice President Caroline Calder, VP for Investments Chris Wright, Treasurer Ellen Levinson, Assistant Treasurer Kelly LaFerrier, Secretary Lynn Van Winkle, and ex officio Nelson North.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. A little difference in height here. Okay, so and actually you do have in your information the names of everybody. So I will now ask for a motion to accept these nominees as trustees of Pequot Library. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Congratulations. The new trustees, why don't you stand up so everybody can see you? There we go. Thank you. You did, okay. I also need now to ask, I should have done this the first time, another vote to accept the slate of officers for the next year. How could I have forgotten that? So I needed a nomination, a motion, second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Good. We're done. Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, people. Next will be the treasurer's report. Scott Balkin will be given it. Scott, how many years were you treasurer? We're going to miss you, but come on up here and give your report. Thank you.
All right, so fiscal year 2022 finances reported an operating loss for the first time in 5 years. This follows 4 consecutive years of net income gains from operations, which is pretty remarkable considering the impact of the COVID lockdown and on all aspects of our services for all of those years. Well, at least 3 of them. Despite the return of the book sales and historically successful fundraising events, including Derby Day and Garden Stroll, the operating revenues were approximately $100,000 less than incurred expenses. And if you're looking at this report, you notice that the big drop looks like from $1.1 million to $26,000 in contribution grants for capital. And so really what that's all about is we raised all the money for the roof last year. We spent all the money on the roof last year, and then that didn't happen this year. A little bit of, I'm not going to say donor fatigue because we have an incredibly supportive community of donors, but that definitely impacted some of the fundraising. So that's why we were a little bit down this year, but all things considered, is very strong. Operating revenues, excluding the capital related, increased slightly more than 10%. Total fundraising efforts constituted approximately 46% of the 2022 funding. Other sources of funding include the town appropriation, which is 26%, investments, which just means we take a little bit of money out of the endowment every year, 15%, and some other, including programs, rent, and some other revenues, 13%. This is the part that is the bigger story, which is operating expenses. So operating expenses, excluding the capital expenditures, meaning primarily the money for the roof, and reserves for future capital, increased approximately 19%, slightly less than 1.4 million. This increase in operating expenses was a result of expensive return to pre-pandemic operations and increased costs during what has obviously been a difficult economic environment, both with high inflation and a very tight labor market. Put simply, virtually every line item from basic utilities to staff and everything in between costs a lot more than it did in 2019, which we all know. All that said, the library's financial position remains extremely strong. Total assets are $8.17 million. I would note that does not include any of the sort of, I don't know how you put it, how do you put a value on this building? I mean, I guess the town will put a value on this building, but I don't think it's really included in the $8.17 million, nor are the true value of the rare book collection and things like that. But according to strict accounting, we have $8.17 million in assets and liabilities of only $116,500. There is a decrease in the combined restricted and board designated endowment funds of $3.32 million during what is proving out to be major adjustment in valuations of assets across the board. Obviously, the endowment benefited from the performance of those assets in the years prior, but we're giving some of that back. The library's investment portfolio is very conservatively managed by Morgan Stanley with oversight by our investment committee. The investment committee, we always make sure to have folks experienced in finance and investments, including myself and Chris Wright and incoming board member Dan McHale. We have several intangible assets that are not even valued at all in the 8.17 million. That includes Stephanie and her staff, my colleagues on the board, all of whom give time and effort every day to ensure that the library continues to be a vital part of the community. And I would say it's another intangible asset is that community of patrons that continues to provide support for the library time and time again at every sort of challenge that we have faced along the way. And then lastly, I'd be remiss to not mention the fact that the Finance Committee benefits tremendously from the consistently excellent work of John Gleckler, our indispensable finance consultant. John. So this year has been very challenging for everybody. We cannot thank the community enough for it and the patrons of the library for their support and their time, their money, and their volunteering. That's it for the treasurer's report.
So at this point, I need to ask for a motion to accept the treasurer's report. Do I have a motion? I have a motion. Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed. Carried. Thank you, Scott. Okay, Stephanie, it's all yours.
Thank you, Nelson. How's everyone doing this afternoon? It's good to see you all. I'm Stephanie Coakley, the director of Pequot Library. This is my 7th annual meeting report. I'm so very honored. We will start to wrap up the program shortly. After my report, there'll be an opportunity to present 3 awards, and then we'll introduce our guest speaker, Courtney White. There may be a bit of a break before we introduce our guest speaker, Courtney White. We'd like to begin promptly at 5 o'clock. On behalf of the staff, I'd like to especially welcome our 5 new board members and our 1 returning board member. We're really looking forward to working with you all. Thank you so much in advance for the work that's ahead. And Nelson, thank you so very much for coming out of your quiet retirement of days spent fishing with family and friends to help lead the board, first as vice president alongside with Sean Kelly and the rest of the board members. And then as president, we can't thank you enough for all that you've done the last 4 years. And we look forward to working with you on the strategic planning process and as ex officio. So Nelson, thank you so very much for all that you did to especially help us start the planning for the overdue historic roof restoration, as well as successfully completing that project. We can't thank you enough, Nelson. I really believe that community is found here at Pequot Library, and in Scott Falcon's response to receiving an award this afternoon on page 27 of your annual report, he talks a bit about community, and I really wanted to talk about that as well in my remarks. And I think that this volunteer service as a board member is really what makes for great community in part at Pequot Library. And there are board members rolling off, including Scott, as we've mentioned, and Sean Kelly's term wraps up, although Sean will remain active, I hope, as part of our strategic planning efforts for sure. And of course, Scott served in a few different capacities on the Finance and Investments Committee, and 10 years, as Scott would say, he was long in the tooth as far as board service goes at Pequot Library. And so we will miss you, and we wish you well on your next volunteer endeavor. And I hope to continue to see you and your family around the library for years to come. So thank you so much, Scott, and Sean. Thank you for your service for 6 years. How did that happen? It went by quickly. And of course, Sean led the board for 2 years as president at the start of a global pandemic and the start of a major capital campaign. And we couldn't have done it without you and the other board members at that time. So thank you so much, Sean, for all that you did. And Joe Kochi stepped down from his board service this summer. Joe simultaneously served on 2 board committees, Building and Grounds and the Finance Investments Committee. We miss Joe greatly. We look forward to seeing him at the library. And just know from the staff, we thank you so very much for sharing your generous time and talent with us throughout the years. To all of you rolling off the board, and welcome new board members most of all. Staff and contractors that are here, I'd love for you to stand up and say hello so that if folks in the audience don't know who you are, Christine Cataldo, our chief librarian, John Gleckler, stand up. Jesse, others, Cecily Dyer, I'm sure I'm leaving others out. Thank you for being here and it's been a challenging past couple years, seasoned and new team members. I dedicate this annual meeting to all of you. You've worked so very hard the last couple years to know how much we recognize it and appreciate it, each and every one of you. And it's the staff, the board, the countless volunteers that make this place so special, as we know. And I wanted to continue to thank you all so very much. The volunteers at Pequot Library, many of you are in the audience. We couldn't do it without you. You're some of the most dedicated supporters in the area of nonprofits. And some of you are here each and every day of the year. You know who you are. The staff works closely, especially with our used book sale volunteers, on all things that happen throughout the year, special event fundraisers, projects, and programs, and especially the used book sales and online sales, not to be forgotten, as I want to be sure to mention those. So a major highlight for 2022 from my perspective is that we significantly leverage your private support, as well as the critically important annual appropriation from the town of Fairfield. We leveraged that support and were awarded a much needed major grant from the Connecticut Humanities. This Connecticut Humanities support came in the form of a Connecticut Cultural Fund grant for operating support. I'm really proud of this. This grant was provided by the Connecticut Humanities with funding provided by the Connecticut State Department of Economic and Community Development, the Connecticut Office of the Arts from the Connecticut State Legislature. I want to thank the Connecticut Humanities for also providing support needed to improve our IT infrastructure and computer technology needs. Both funding opportunities came at a time of fundraising uncertainty for sure, and really truly helped stabilize and support the organization this last year. So I really wanted to be sure to mention that. And I do believe the time has come to continue leveraging your support and take this organization to even higher levels of excellence and achievement. And we must continue to steward the remarkable holdings that are only found here at Pequot Library, as well as smartly position the library so that it can respond to the ever-changing needs of our community. And we're doing that in the form of strategic planning work, finally. So I really want to thank the current board leadership of Sean Kelly, and Nelson North, and Lynn Laukoff, Charlotte Rogan, Matt Wagner, along with senior members of the staff, our chief librarian, Christine Capella, and special collections librarian, Cecily Dyer. We are on track, as has been mentioned, to complete this overdue important strategic plan. We're going to do it by June. You heard it here. And we will do that so that we can allocate our limited resources in a really thoughtful way, with a long lens that takes into account not only what we can do in the here and now, but what our future audiences will need from Pequot Library. We're always thinking about that. What are we doing now? What do we need down the road? And each of you will have a chance to participate in this important document in the form of a visitor survey. Keep an eye out in your email inboxes. It'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks, and you'll be able to actively participate in providing us important feedback, comments necessary for this smart planning for the future. So I'm really excited for this next year. I hope you agree. There's this feeling of renewal in the reading rooms, and it happened this fall, and it will continue. And my hope is that you keep the library a part of your conversations with family and friends and neighbors. Keep it a high priority when you're talking about what you're all up to. Bring people to the library. That helps in so many ways, making introductions for us. And it bears worth repeating. And I'll wrap up here. that in order to sustain these last few years of success, we've accomplished a ton during a really challenging time. We will continue to increase visitation, diversify our audience, improve and increase our fundraising efforts across the board. That's always on our minds. And that's what we have to look ahead to. More great stories. I thank you for supporting the library. And I know that our incoming board president, Kokan Wilcox, would like to make a few remarks. So I think at this time, I'll turn the podium over to Koki.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I would like to make a surprise tribute to my predecessor, Nelson North, for his amazing achievements that he has accomplished during his 2 years as president. His, 6 years on the board? And I guess there are 2 more years as ex officio going. He's accomplished so many things, which include the supervision of the restoration of the iconic terracotta roof and the attendant fundraising. He has supervised the revisions of the bylaws, bringing them up to date and into the 21st century. And just recently, he established our strategic long-range planning committee, all of which are fabulous achievements that we appreciate so much. And as a token of our appreciation, I have a little gift for you, some flies for your fishing. My husband made them. Jarvis made them. You have a lot of time to use those now.
Merry Christmas, Jen. Good. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Nelson. A big round of applause.
Thank you, Koki. So that was the opening act of today's program. We're actually about to wrap up a bit of reports and turn things over to the award ceremony. And we'll begin with the Hop Perry Award Lifetime Achievement for Treasurer Scott Vulcan. Scott's being awarded with this Lifetime Achievement Award for his 10 years of service on the board, during which he held the offices of Vice President of Investments, Assistant Treasurer, and Treasurer. His service on the Finance Committee has been invaluable, and the many financial contributions his family has made over the years. Thank you so very much to your entire family, and 2 of his daughters are here with us this afternoon. Thank you for all that you've done for the library, Scott. We're going to miss you on the board. And we have the honor of passing along to you and your family for the next 12 months the beautiful bowl that has been inscripted with all of the Lifetime Achievement Award winners over the last several years. Here you are. Thank you. The Crane Wood Book Sale Award goes this year to Shelley Hall. And Shelley and her late husband, Tom, have been among the most hardworking and stalwart volunteers over the past 30+ years. Shelley manages the children's books donations, which is no small task. She is beloved by her fellow volunteers, many of whom are here to support her today. Tom was a warrior battling through hardships and illnesses with the most positive of attitudes. And sadly, Tom passed away last month. Thank you for being here, Shelley.
I may die. I may go out of order here, but I want to thank the people that are here to support me. I'm very grateful. And I want to thank you for this wonderful award. Knowing those who have come before me and received it, I am humbled to be also a recipient of it. I share it with my husband. When I first came to Pequot, we always did a lot of things together, but for the first year or two, he didn't come with me. And so I said to him, you have to come. This is book heaven. You have to be here. I fell in love with this library. So he started coming with me. And the best day, well, the rest was history. He fell in love with it too. But our best day was Saturday of the big sale. All day long, he would be sorting and organizing books all day, and I would be cashiering. And then the end of the day was really the very best. For as long as he was able, we would head off to the last slap came down. We couldn't leave before you closed the tents for the day. The last slap was down, and we would head off to Friendly for dinner. Elegant, right? But wait, it was better. What a dinner we had. Our dinner all the time was ice cream sundaes, the biggest we could get. And so that's what I have to say thank you for the award and for the memory. So thank you so very much. Oh, my goodness, thank you. Oh, how beautiful. Thank you.
Volunteer of the Year award goes to our friend and neighbor Marlene Sheehan. Marlene has been a fantastic supporter of Pequot Library, from serving as a judge of Derby Day attire and hats, to inviting staff members to her home for dinner, to filling in at the front desk so staff could attend offsite meetings. Marlene is a rock. She was the impetus to the Southport Garden Stroll, insisting the library begin it as a fundraiser. She reached out to homeowners, asked them to participate, and she still gives us leads on who to approach for next year. The Garden Stroll is a hit because of Marlene. Please come up and accept these flowers. That wraps up our award, although we have a bit more gift giving. Sean? Thank you so much again, Sean and Scott, for all you've done for the library. I think that wraps up the annual meeting, and we can take a brief break. We have about 15 minutes. There's some beverages in the rear of the room. Now is a really great opportunity to go into the Perkin Gallery and take this opportunity to view the current exhibition, Allure of the Garden, that's on the other side of that door. We'll see you about 5 of 5 for our guest presentation with Courtney White. If new board members can come up to the stage for a photo, Jennifer and Libby and Dan and Caroline, come on up for a photo opportunity if you don't mind. Jesse, here's our photographer. How about How about right here? Thank you for joining us for a photo. Technical difficulties earlier, so we were like missing a part earlier, so that's what the thing. But you gave me the thumbs up, so we should be good.
You guys do it.
That's a big fucking reason why we're here. My grandparents, right? Nephew here. In, I'm here and there. Yeah. It's such a beautiful. It's a thing. Person down for yeah, I mean, right now, we've kind of collapsed where we not. They can provide them.
But I've got it. Nice and solid. Basically, the problem, better. Breathing one.
If I may have everyone's attention and ask you to kindly take your seats. Thank you so much for wrapping up your conversations and taking a seat. Thank you again. I have the honor of introducing our 133rd annual meeting guest presenter, Courtney White. She's the founder and president of Butternut, a lifestyle company creating a premium home and food content that connects viewers to personalities and places that inspire, inform, and entertain. Prior to launching Butternut in May 2022, White was president of Food Network and general manager of HGTV. At Food Network, she created multi-platform hits, including Guy Fieri's Tournament of Champions and Amy Schumer Learns to Cook. White also co-owns with her husband, Carrick Kenny, Butternut Farms, a fresh cut flower farm right here in Southport. She and Hugh Kenny, the youngest of her 3 children, recently published their first book, Abraham Lincoln Was What He Ate. Please join me in welcoming Courtney White to the Pequot Library stage.
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Grace, for the really warm invitation. And it's humbling to be here in this beautiful room speaking with you all. So thank you so much for joining this time on this kind of gray Sunday afternoon. As Stephanie mentioned, I am the former general manager of HGTV, president of Food Network, and now founder of Butternut. And in all of those jobs, I was really a lifestyle content creator, which meant I produced unscripted TV shows specifically about food and home and a little bit about gardens. And I'm also a cookbook lover and a Southport resident. And now in television, we always start out with something that we call the tease, which is a little glimpse of what's ahead and something to keep you from turning the channel, something that incites you to put down the remote control out of reach and stay tuned. So if this were a show, open tease, I definitely wouldn't rely on just me to keep you hooked. I would mention that Bobby Flay, Guy Fieri, Ina Garten, Martha Stewart, Julia Child will lie ahead, and legitimately they do in this presentation. So hopefully that will incentivize you to stick with me as I start my story at the beginning, though I fully am cognizant that I'm surrounded by stacks and stacks of the greatest stories of all time. And so I definitely feel that the pressure is on. So the first time I ever cooked from a book, it actually was not from a cookbook. It was a Halloween picture book, and I was 6 years old. And on the last page, there was a recipe for a pumpkin bundt cake. And I made it after school on a Thursday afternoon, and Thursday happened to also be the night of my dad's tennis league. So I baked the cake, and after tennis, he and his friends came over to our house. They opened beers. I served my cake, and nobody ate more than a tiny little bite. And I was heartbroken. And my mom said, no, they loved it. It's just that not everyone loves beer and cake together, that it was merely a pairing issue. But it was only after everyone left that I tasted it, which I would soon learn was a cardinal sin of cooking, to not taste as you go. And only then did I realize that I didn't add in 1.5 cups of sugar. Instead, I had used that much salt. And it took me a beat to get back on the horse. And from there, I jumped into a legitimate cookbook. And this is the one. My Learn to Cook book. And as you can see, it's very well worn. I had 3 sisters. They all cooked from it. And now my kids cook from it. And my sister, who is a doctorate in humanities and is a very A-type personality, made sure we had all reviews. And so this cheese baked potatoes, which became my favorite recipe, and it's still withstanding. In fact, I made it last night for my mom's 75th birthday. And my review then was, they're excellent. They're so good. Everyone thought they were excellent, but they take a lot of time. And my daughter, who has jumped into the multi-generational review, is a much tougher critic than my sisters and I were. I would add extra cheese, is all she says. So eventually cookbooks would become part of my life, as they are for many people, from chefs to bibliophiles to ordinary people like me who love to cook. But it was a gradual cookbook discovery journey for me. And these books came to populate my personal and professional paths. And since it's October and since Southport is dotted with beautiful front porches decorated with pumpkins, my story now jumps out of the kitchen and into one of the first short films I created. It's an October day in 1985, and I'm 10, and I'm doing normally what I would do on weekends, which is making a home movie with my parents' Betamax video camera that they kept in this golden Pelican case that just seemed magical to me. And the movie was called Case of the Moving Pumpkins. And the basic plot is 3 kids made up of 2 of my sisters and my neighborhood backyard playmate, Kenneth, notice their pumpkins are missing. And after an intense investigation through all of the scenic corners of our backyard, they realized that my youngest sister, then 4, was the ruthless culprit who was moving the pumpkins to other corners of the property. Now, looking back, this film needed a lot of work. I hadn't yet been taught a lot about the screenwriting craft. Stakes were one area, for example, in need of improvement. Stealing the pumpkins could have been a lot more exciting than just relocating them. But as I said, my journey's gradual. But I love nothing more than writing plays and movies for the neighborhood kids. And I grew up outside of Troy, New York, and attended Emma Willard for high school. And one day, Wendy Wasserstein came and read an excerpt from the Heidi Chronicles. And she was a giant lightning bolt of inspiration. And then the following year, the Al Pacino movie, Scent of a Woman, was filmed on our campus. And I nearly failed that semester because I spent every day glued to the outside windows, watching every move the crew made, trying to figure out what their jobs were and how they got them. And so I was being fueled by my educational environment and by the food I ate. Now, I did not grow up in a culinary household. My mom's mom died when she was young, and she was raised primarily by her dad. She always told us she ate Pillsbury cinnamon rolls every morning for breakfast, which we all thought sounded pretty delicious. But she was never taught to cook. And when my sisters and I were both kids, both our parents worked long hours and we ate out a lot. And fast casual restaurants weren't a term that I was familiar with at a time, but I knew the whole Friendly's menu by heart. I was a proud member of the Howard Johnson's birthday club, and I got my postcard in the mail every year for my free meal, which was fried clam strips, French fries, and orange sherbet every single year. And we did eat at home too. My favorite meal was the Salisbury steak TV dinner, though the best dessert, the chocolate brownie, came along with a fried chicken. So it was a formative lesson in trade-offs. And those nights eating dinner on the couch on the tray tables, I watched every movie and TV show I could. And I found myself gravitating to cooking series that clearly were not made for my particular demographic, and yet I could not get enough of them. And one that was my absolute favorite was called The Frugal Gourmet. And for those of you who don't know or remember Jeff Smith, here is what I saw.
How are you? Welcome to my kitchen again. Get a pencil and a piece of paper and hurry along with me because today we're going to do so much at once. Yeah, that's what he said. And if you're sitting at home saying, Agnes, I wonder if you can roll a pie crust. Well, it's none of your business. Not too much. Measure these things in your hand first, remember? So otherwise you'll have a terrible time when a kid comes running in from the yard and he claims he's just been murdered by the neighbor boy and it's just a cut in his finger, but you lose track and you don't know what you've poured in there. So use it in your hand first. Pour it in your hand first. All right, Jeffrey, stop using your apron for your towel. I'm trying, ma'am. I'm trying. I can't deal with that poor cat. Goodbye, my dear. There you are. You know, that's what they did with me in surgery. Did I tell you that? You see, I just happened. Ouch. Oh, I just took these out of the oven just before you came. I never cook something with the lye. You know what? I've just done it. That isn't the one I want you to see. Don't look at that. I better stir this down before it attacks. This one looks like Jabba the Hutt.
So from there, I entered NYU Film School very much wanting to be the next Steven Spielberg. But I found that the movies I enjoyed making the most were documentary shorts inspired by big and small events I saw around me. One example, my older sister, who happened to be at NYU as a doctoral student, with students in her French class that she taught, felt everyone was still treating her as a kid until she bought these black nubuck 2-inch high clogs with a strap around the heel. And she put those on, and that morning, suddenly everyone treated her as an adult. The coffee barista, her students, everyone. And my documentary was called The Magic Clogs, and it may have been a trademark infringement. But I also discovered foods, Curry Row along East 6th Street, Mamoon's Falafel on McDougal, pierogies at Veselka, and I started cooking a lot. Dinner parties for dozens crammed into my small dorm room. Then junior year, I began interning with Martha Stewart. I had become a huge fan, and I worked on a holiday show called Home for the Holidays, starring Martha Stewart, Julia Child, and wouldn't you know it, Miss Piggy. Julia and Martha made side-by-side croquembouche towers, and I loved Julia's humility. Martha's is geometrically perfect, and Julia self-effacingly called hers the country version. After college, I landed a dream job at HBO's documentary unit, and here the storytelling was as vast and varied as any place I could think of. We were editing a children's documentary on holidays around the world. Immediately next door was a documentary investigative on Cat House, which was a brothel in Nevada. And only at HBO could you have those two edit rooms side by side. The most intense project I worked on there was a documentary called Dealing Dogs, following the stories of pets that were sold to animal research. And I was in Mississippi undercover filming with the main kingpin in this world. And I had a flannel shirt on with a buttonholed camera, my sunglasses and hat. And I was so nervous, and I was very aware that for some, this may be a career highlight. And for me, it frankly didn't feel like a fit. I was gratified by the work I was doing, but it was on that trip that HGTV called and said they had an opening in their New York creative team. And my mom always had magazines around the house about decor. She loved to redecorate. We would go to school one day, come home, the living room would be completely different. And I had friends of friends who worked there, and I said yes pretty immediately. And over the 12 years I was there, we really evolved the network from small crafting shows that were studio based to more ambitious shows like Property Brothers and Fixer Upper with Chip and Joanna Gaines. I moved to the Knoxville headquarters with my family, which was where HGTV was based. And we bought a farm. And there I had much more room to spread out and entertain. We adopted horses and donkeys. My 3 kids had lots of room to play. We had big tables so we could fit 40 for Thanksgiving. On the right-hand side, you can see it in the foreground. In the pink on the left is my daughter. You can't please everybody at a crowd that size, but you can try. And I was discovering new foods here. Benton's Bacon, burnt ends at Dead End Barbecue, the definition of a meat and 3, and the best pecan pie of my life at Buttermilk Sky Pie Company. And my cookbook collection expanded. I was very influenced and impressed by a James Beard award-winning Vittles, which is really part storytelling about a place. It's really about Appalachian food and recipes with beautiful photography. And this book has really evolved how cookbooks are written, where it's not just recipes that can be told, but it's really about stories of families, heritages, and places. And then after 12 years at HGTV, I got a call from our parent company who owned both networks and said, please come back to New York and run Food Network. And I had 2 questions. Number 1, is working at Food Network going to ruin my favorite shows? Top of the list is Ina Garten's Barefoot Contessa. And two, where can I commute into New York and keep my horses, donkeys, chickens, and farm lifestyle that my kids have so grown to love? And the answer to that second question was Southport on Hulls Highway specifically. Now, the recent HBO scripted series, Julia, I think does a great job of really encapsulating a key question for those of us who work in food television, which is how do you take a recipe? How do you take something in the written form and teach it on television in a really entertaining way? And so I loved that this series really untangled that. And I was hugely relieved to find that working at Food Network did not ruin my favorite shows. It really heightened them for me and made them appreciate them even more deeply. And the talent like Ina, Bobby, and Guy not only were cookbook authors, they were often restaurant chefs, in Ina's case, a caterer. Ina had even worked in the White House, and they were each running really huge individual businesses. And I was in such a privileged position to be in their presence. And they had been teaching me for years to cook via books and TV, but working closely with each of them, so different in style, I learned a lot of lessons beyond just cooking and cookbooks from each of them. The first time I met Ina, we went out to lunch at Jean-Georges, and she perused the menu and then zeroed in on a Parmesan crusted chicken. And she said, I'm working on chicken recipes and I really want to see how he does it. And I watched her eat the meal and dissect every ingredient and get her take on what made it so delicious. And I realized, that's what makes her cookbooks so extraordinary, is that she takes the best meals from the most fabulous restaurants and then makes them ones that we can make for our friends in our own kitchens. And she tests her recipes more thoroughly than anybody I've ever met. She also really inspired me with her story of writing her own first cookbook. She had been a caterer for years. She had been a food store owner in the Hamptons, and she had sold her business and was ready to move on. And she had been so overworked and the hours were relentless that she had no idea what she was going to do next. And so she rented an office and she just went to that office every day, not knowing how she was going to spend her days. And because she got so bored, she told me, she just started writing down recipes. And those recipes ended up becoming her first book. And her first book ended up becoming an empire. And what she said to me was, if I hadn't allowed myself to be bored, and if I hadn't paid close attention to how I filled that time, I never would have found this path to this next career. And I tell that story a lot to friends who feel like they want to make a move and they don't know what point B is. And it is a risky, scary thing that Ina is suggesting. But that quiet time that can really lead to discovery is something that I think so few of us take. And I thought it was great advice for Ina and really personally inspirational to me. And then lastly, she told me, what doesn't keep you awake is not worth doing. And I think about that a lot. Now, Bobby Flay is someone who is so inspired by place, and it is so much fun to watch him draw inspiration in the moment from a place. He loves Rome. He loves anybody doing really authentic, off the beaten path cooking in little neighborhoods of Los Angeles. He will go to any farmer's market he can, and he's an amazing natural talent at crafting flavors that you would never think of pairing together. He is also the most direct communicator I think I've ever encountered. And he is a great example of asking exactly for what you want. And I think that comes from his real street smarts. He did not finish high school, and he has gotten to where he is by just really observing and being an incredibly sharp, shrewd, direct, honest businessman. He is also incredibly detailed. I remember having a meeting at his apartment in New York, and he had a team in the kitchen photographing his latest cookbook. And there was a kale salad with pomegranate seeds, and they were about to take the photograph. And there were not enough pomegranate seeds. And then the pomegranate seeds were not in the right place. And so our meeting was postponed 45 minutes, which was fine with me because I was so inspired and captivated by watching him place the pomegranate seeds perfectly on this kale salad in this photograph. And I think that is why he is so successful, because he cares about where those pomegranate seeds are. Guy Fieri is a real master at managing his energy. He is larger than life. Wherever he walks in a public place, he is always accosted by fans, and he gives to them as much as he receives from them. So he is always operating at an 11, but that is not sustainable. And so what I learned from him is when you're on, and when you're off, really go off. So he spends every quarter a couple of weeks completely off the grid. No cell phones, woods. He loves nature. And so that's, to me, a real lesson in how to really pace your energy and your career for the long haul. Game time preparation is when Guy really shines. The 48 hours up until a new series that is something new that's creatively challenging for him. He spends that 48 hours thinking nothing but that and goes deep, deep, deeper into the creative, finding holes in the storylines, figuring out what could go wrong. He really plays out any scenario and ends up, when he walks out on set, the most prepared professional I have ever seen. He also knows how to connect with fans. And here's an example. I was in Epcot Center with my kids. We were in a long, long line waiting for one of the rides, the one that's in the Sphere. It's the History of Civilization ride. And I look over and there's this group of people in bright pink matching t-shirts, and they have a matching picture. And I was like, oh, it's cute, a family reunion. And then I look closer at the t-shirts and it's a little bit familiar. And I go up to them and I say, you know, I'm a friend of Guy's. Could I take your picture? And they say, sure. And so then I text Guy within a second about the close up and the wide shot. And I continue on my line, and they're looking at maps, figuring out where to go next in Epcot. And Guy has 2 million fans on Instagram. And within 5 seconds, he posts that picture on Instagram. And then I can see from the line the reaction of that crowd, seeing that Guy has posted them on Instagram and has gotten 47,000 likes. So it was just a nice immediate connector in the social media world, which is usually without persona. There were so many Food Network highlights, working with No Kid Hungry, the organization, going to the White House and seeing Dr. Biden's Thanksgiving recipes with host Trisha Yearwood. But then a year and a half ago, my husband and I, as Stephanie mentioned, bought Butternut Farm, which used to be Evelyn Lee's Butternut Gardens, and it changed both of our careers. And so many people, I think, during COVID had these moments of figuring out what path they were on and asking themselves, do I want to stay on this path? Or in these quiet moments, like Ina alluded to, what else could I create that would involve some risk, but maybe some more fulfillment and some balance? My husband left finance and he learned to become a flower farmer. We're at the tail end of dahlia season, so please come to the cottage up on Hulls Highway and get the last of the season. And the second floor of the barn at Butternut Farm was storage. Evelyn had beautiful vases and shelves of supplies. And I woke up one Saturday with the vision of changing that second floor storage room into an office. and that setting a lifestyle media company in a lifestyle inspirational setting of a flower farm was something that felt like I was called to do. So in May, I made the leap to leave Food Network and start Butternut. It still means I work with my friends at Food Network and at HGTV, but at other organizations too. And I'm able to really spend my days fully on board in the content and work with new upcoming talent in the food and home space. And one of them who's really inspiring me today is Molly Boz. And her cookbook, Cook This Book, is full of wonderful recipes, a voice that is so fresh and authentic. And I'd love to show you a show that Molly and I are developing called Molly's in the Mood for. And Molly is so obsessed with food that she spends all of her nights dreaming about food. And then she wakes up in the morning with cravings that just urgently need to be satiated. And she is constantly on the quest to learn more about food, to cook new flavors. And so a sizzle is a fast-paced sales tape. It's a little illustration of what a series could be. So this is the first few minutes of the sales tape for Molly's in the Mood for.
I was placed on this earth with one mission: to convince all of you that cooking is really fun.
New York Times bestselling author, Molly Boz. You are really the it girl of the culinary world.
I cook in this bold, unabashed way.
I got seen a little girl, she's on her mind. No doubt about she looks so fine.
It's the pastrami roast chicken with a big bunch of dill and schmaltzy onions. It's really sexy stuff.
Look at that mortadella, would ya? Cheers!
Ciao. Well, this is why I come here. Stomach hurts from laughing so much, and maybe also from all the cookies we've eaten. Well done. Okay, look at these beautiful babies. I love this dish. It's great.
Cheers. Cheers.
Strawberries.
Okay, this is insane.
You can't open it? Hot water.
Son of a, I got tennis elbow, you know?
Yeah. I'll get it for you.
Good luck.
I got it.
I'm a little caught off guard. Did you sleep okay?
I slept great, but I was dreaming of food all night long. For as long as I can remember, I've been dreaming about food. When I was a wee one, it was vanilla soft serve drizzled with peanut butter and topped with crushed up chocolate cookies. As a teen, it was a sausage, egg, and cheese on a Kaiser roll from a dingy bodega in Poughkeepsie, New York. Nowadays, visions of hoagies, sea sows, and oysters dance around in my head. Last night, for reasons we will never know, I dreamt of pupusas. The steaming hot, crispy, oozy pockets of dough stuffed with cheese, pork, and meats. It's the national dish of El Salvador. Lucky for me, I can get them right down the street. Jackie's Salvadorian food. It's the ultimate late night snack style. And yet this morning, I'm suddenly desperate to drop everything and learn how to make Jackie's pupusas.
I feel good. I knew that I wouldn't.
So lastly, oh, thank you. I learned so many lessons during my time at Food Network, deep, formative, but perhaps none as important as what to serve for Thanksgiving. And so I think you all have this pamphlet, which is the collection of the favorite Thanksgiving recipes. As I was telling Grace, when you have your guests ask for the same thing the next year, that's when it goes on to this list. So the collection is really a representative of a broad array of talent. Michael Simon's spatchcock smoked turkey, and Spick and Span will spatchcock your turkey for you. Ina's homemade gravy, which I actually make in advance. Sometimes I do it when I'm roasting chicken, and I'll just save that instead of making it on the day of Thanksgiving, especially when I'm doing a smoked turkey on the smoker. Mushroom and leek bread pudding. So this could be controversial if you have people who really love stuffing or dressing, depending on what you call it. This is not exactly that, in that it has a different consistency. It is so delicious that maybe you want to introduce it by having your original recipe, and then maybe this could be just a backup, because it does take a little bit of getting used to, but it has become now the number one crowd pleaser on my table, I think. Alton's creamy mashed potatoes. Also, if you need a 101 refresh in carving a turkey, Alton's online video is consistently year after year the most watched of any chef on the planet. We have sweet potato casserole from Ree Drummond, the Pioneer Woman. I do like a not super sweet sweet potato casserole, and some of them are too sweet, but I love the balance of hers. Alex Gurnishelli's cranberry sauce. Alex is a second generation cookbook expert. Her mom actually was one of the editors of Joy of Cooking, so it really runs in her blood. Bobby's Parker House rolls. If you serve those hot, it's, the crowd just goes crazy for those. And then Molly's cold and crunchy green beans with garlicky pistachio vinaigrette have become one of my go-tos all year. And those are from her Cook This Book. And Molly is midway through writing her second cookbook, which is going to come out next year, which I can't wait for. So that is my Thanksgiving recipe shortcut list. And thank you for coming today. And I think we have a few minutes for any questions that anybody might have, but thank you. Yeah. Delightful, easier than most talent to work with, and really knows her recipes. Yes. So Butternut Farm is on Hulls Highway in Southport, just off the corner of Cedar. So it's a block south of Hulls Farm Road. And there's a round sign. We have a barn, and then it's called the Cottage, which is a small house on the property. And that's open for honor system business Thursday through Sunday. So we stock the fridge in there with flowers, and you can come in, take your pick from anything that's in there. My husband's business card is also in there with all of his contact info. So if you ever have events or need something special that's not just a grab and go in the Cottage, we stock it with anything that's seasonal, that's just fresh picked, usually that morning. But there's always things that we can pull together that are specialty if you're doing something with a certain color scheme or need some more volume. So it depends on the network partner that we work with. Molly is really interested in pushing the envelope, but you also, at the end of the day, no shows work if they don't deliver the information clearly to the viewer. So I think it might have, more of a stylized top. And then once we get into the cooking, it'll be a little looser and feel kind of warts and all. I mean, something about Molly is she is so improvisational, and she is so that kind of imperfection and that authenticity is her mark. And Ina's a little bit more choreographed. You know, she really does her homework, and they're just kind of different personalities. So I think the best way to approach these shows is that the shows really feel like they're the essence of that person's persona at the end of the day. Yes. You know, I have, because I am in charge of all of the meals, I don't do my desserts. So I make everybody who comes bring their favorite pie from their local shop. So I say for dessert, go ahead and support your local bakeries. That's what I like to do. But I can send you some dessert suggestions. Thank you so much for coming.
Before you run, one last announcement. The 133rd meeting of the Pequot Library Board of Trustees is hereby adjourned. See you next year. Actually, I won't. Koki will see you next year.